Hi and welcome everyone, this is the Hobo Prepper and I am Friar Tuck. Thank you for joining me. So today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about UBI. Now a lot of you are already apprehensive about it and you're like, oh no, we don't need to do that, that's communism. And other people might be going, yeah, we need that for various reasons. And I'm going to be talking about both sides of the argument and kind of helping you guys get a better understanding of what's really going on, what are the benefits and what are the flaws in the UBI system. But before I get into that, I would like to say that for those of you that are new to the channel, thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe or hit the bell notification so that you can see all my newest videos. Now, I have been tearing down my Patreon and rebuilding it. So a lot of the videos that you guys are seeing are older videos from Gainesville all the way up until I got here to Chattanooga, because I migrated all those videos over here as I rebrand and replatform my Patreon channel or my Patreon platform. So let's go ahead and get into UBI. UBI stands for Universal Basic Income. It started during the 2020 presidential race, where Andrew Yang said, hey, because of the mechanization of the workforce, we need to, as a society, start thinking about guaranteeing a basic income. And he called it like the freedom income or freedom disbursement, something like that. It was just a word spin on it, but there are some different things that are entailed in it that we should talk about. So let's talk about the mechanization of the workforce. And I've learned some things here that I wasn't fully aware of. And just so you know, the mechanization of the workforce is happening on such a rapid scale. It will be a matter of maybe 2 or 3 years before we find out. It'll be a matter of 2 or 3 years before we find out the full ramifications of what's going on. So a large portion of manufacturing is starting to mechanize their workforce, which means that they're starting to put robots in place of human beings, and they're starting to get human beings out of the workforce. And so what does that mean for our population? What that means for our population is that over time, we as workers, we're also consumers. And so as consumers who are no longer able to find gainful employment because robots have taken our jobs, now these companies that are doing the mechanization are kind of hurting themselves in a lot of ways, because they're getting rid of their consumers in favor of more profit, more efficiency, and more production, which is the natural evolution of things. But you also got to look at the unintended consequences of what's going on here. And so companies that make $500 million or more in a year, 50% of them, so we're talking about like McDonald's, we're talking about large manufacturing places, I don't know any offhand, maybe like Texas Instruments, places like that, they are rapidly mechanizing their workforce, which means 50% of these companies have already started moving their production and moving their company towards more of a robotic automation. Now, companies that make $10 million or less, only 20% of them have done it, and it's only because of cost. And as it becomes more prevalent, as technology improves, that number is going to grow. So these are some things that you as a worker, as an individual, need to be worried about, because they're doing everything from trading, so like trading stocks and bonds, and that's part of what's playing into the inflation that we're dealing with, is because these artificial intelligence pieces of software are trading at such a rapid pace that human beings can't keep up with them. We're already hearing from different sources that you have artificial intelligence that is able to write papers, pass tests, and are smarter than humans in a lot of ways. Okay, so this is something that we as a society, as a workforce, need to really be concerned about, which is why we would need something like universal basic income. One, because if there's no more consumers, that means the economy is going to crash. The rich people are going to be poor, and the poor people are going to be even poorer, if not worse off than that. And I'll let your mind wander there. Okay, so there are some people that want to talk about funding. Okay, because the big part of this is, you got the conservative side who says, oh, well, we already have programs, we don't want to do anything as far as more funding, we need to figure out another way to pay it. And then you have the other side of the aisle that says, hey, we've got the money, we have to have the money because we have to have a humane way to take care of the displaced worker, the worker that is not going to be able to have an opportunity. Now, you might sit there and say, well, with all of our other technological revolutions, we have had the ability to create new jobs and things like that. But here's the one thing. I read many years ago that for someone to go to college and actually graduate, get a bachelor's degree, and for them to be proficient, they need to have an average IQ of 120 or above. Well, the average American has something like a 95 IQ score. And, we're getting stupider with social media and with technology. So, we're probably down to 90 or 85 now. Well, that means that the people needed to be able to work on these mechanical machines are dwindling, because that means we're going to have more and more less skilled labor, and the need for skilled labor and skilled professionals is going to go through the roof. And so that's just going to open up the door more and more for artificial intelligence, which is it is a double-edged sword for all of us. So the people that say, oh well, we already spend enough money, we could take that same amount of money and we could reallocate it. Well, the problem is that they want to so in San Francisco they were talking about how much it would cost, and if they taxed it, after everything, it would cost them $2 billion a year after taxes could be spent. And so instead of spending it on the displaced worker, what they want to do is they want to expand the police state and start putting it into more police officers and more 911. Well, there is something that nobody's really talking about is, if I don't have any work, I'm going to commit crimes. And now because the workforce has pushed me out due to the mechanization, now what happens to me? Now I got to go steal, or I've got to go commit a crime just to be able to put food on my family's table, to be able to take care of my family. So now they're going to increase the police, and that in so many ways is an inhumane way of looking at it. Whereas those that are saying that we could fund it, so what they're talking about is, instead of just giving it to everybody and making it universal, is that we want to do means testing. So those that are at the poverty line or just a little bit above the poverty line and below will be able to get some sort of universal basic income, or get some sort of basic income to help offset their costs. That means everybody from, let's just say, somebody that makes $50,000 a year all the way down to somebody who is homeless, they will be able to have some sort of guaranteed income. And instead of just paying for it and having another budget line item, what they're talking about is eliminating welfare, changing us to something like a universal health care, which universal health care, as much as people don't like it, the one problem that we have with healthcare in this country, and I'm not going to get into it too much, is that we're too busy going to the emergency room instead of going and seeing a primary care physician or doing preventative care. If we actually did preventative care, it would, and went and saw a doctor on a regular basis, it would actually lower our overall costs for healthcare. So universal healthcare could be beneficial if we actually started using it the way it's supposed to. But humans are humans, and they're going to do what humans do. They're also talking about cutting tax loops. We're going to need to be a lot smarter in our spending, and we also need to cut defense. Now, all of these different cuts, by eliminating welfare. So, I get $282 a month in food stamps. Well, if I'm getting $1,000 a month, instead of getting the food stamps, I would get $1,000 a month, which then I can go and spend on food however I want. Now, if I use less in food because, I'm not eating as much as the average person, then I can, then I have more money to put in my pocket to put towards other things, okay? Or, the earned income credit. When my son was born, we got the earned income credit. It gave me $200 a month. And so that right there, $1,000 a month versus $200 a month, that would be able to play, because my ex-wife and I, we lived off of $75 every 2 weeks in food, and we could barely afford our rent and our bills. And if it wasn't for hand-me-downs for my son, we wouldn't have been able to afford clothes for him. So something like this would be actually beneficial and help. And not only that, it's going to benefit the economy and change the way that recessions happen, because with a guaranteed income, it means that recessions are going to be less. Now, another thing that we need to talk about before we start talking about crime is that in order to be able to modernize the workforce, the average person is going to have to look at getting a bachelor's degree or more in mechanics, mechanical engineering, which means you're going to have to be good at math and science, which means we're going to have to really restructure our educational system. So again, this is a very complicated, multifaceted system that if we implement it right and we do it properly, it will actually be beneficial and improve our society, instead of creating the issues that all these other welfare and benefit programs have because of the bloated overhead and the misuse and misappropriation. So now let's talk about crime, because crime is one of the big factors that will motivate us towards universal basic income. So in Brazil, they have for quite a few years they have offered their people universal basic income, and this is what they're doing is they're paying their citizens to so that their kids can go to school and they don't have to go to work, and they're paying for them to do a couple other things. So in a lot of ways, that it's tied to some sort of performance. Now, just by adding the universal basic income to be able to improve education. And one thing about education is the more educated society becomes, the less violent the society becomes. So it has reduced crime by 6.5% when it was expanded to include 16 to 17-year-olds. And it actually has reduced crime overall. Property crime and violent crime are two of the biggest forms of crime that have been reduced. Also, Colombia has found that, because they're doing it as well, finds a reduction in property crime by 20%, reduction in violent crime for 15 to 19-year-olds is between 20 and 25%, and robberies have gone down by 25%. That is a huge reduction in the overall crime rate, as far as being in a third world country, and to see how our economy is doing, and the fact that we as a country, because of infrastructure and other things, we are slipping into a third world country. This is something that will be here on our shores soon. Okay, so this is just the basic introduction to universal basic income, so that you understand the basic argument and so that you can make a decision on your own. Now, universal basic income can have and may have a lot of positive implications, but if it's not done, because we're in an election cycle, this is a time to get the right politicians in there that are actually going to listen to your voice versus listening to their donors, which is large corporations and large financial interests. They can listen to you. So it's important that you become educated and know who you're voting for, instead of voting R or D just because that's what you voted for all these years. Okay, so thank you for being a subscriber. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you want to support the channel financially, you can do it in one of three ways. You can come on over to Patreon. I have 4 tiers, and you can decide which one fits you. You could also put a tip in my tip jar, and that funds me and also helps fund some of the other projects that I'm going to be working on over the next few months. Or you can go through my affiliate links. All of those will help the channel financially. The tip jar helps it, and the Patreon helps the channel more directly and quickly. All that stuff can be found in the description, as well as the sources that I've used to be able to make this article. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next